imagine you have this intern.
Okay, an intern.
Right, an intern who has literally read every book in the entire world, and they can type, I don't know, 1,000 words a minute.
Well, sounds like a great hire.
You would think so, right? But here's the catch. They have absolutely zero common sense, like zero understanding of your company's unwritten rules.
Oh, right. I know where this is going.
Yeah, so if you tell that intern, get me some coffee, they might just sprint to the grocery store, buy a bag of raw coffee beans, and pour them directly into your hand.
Which is technically exactly what you asked for.
Exactly. They did exactly what you asked, technically. No. But without the exact right human English to guide them, like, please brew a pot of dark roast coffee and pour it into my mug, they will just run in completely the wrong direction.
That is such a perfect analogy.
Well, thank you. And welcome, everyone, to a special deep dive on the Pathlight English channel. If you are listening to this right now, you are likely a professional navigating a modern workplace.
Right. You are someone looking to perfect your English communication.
Yeah.
Especially when all these new technologies are being introduced into your office.
And that intern analogy we just talked about, well, that is a perfect way to look at the artificial intelligence tools entering our offices today.
It really is. And just to set the stage for you, we are looking strictly at the communication language surrounding these tools today.
Right, so no coding talk.
Exactly, no coding talk. We are not diving into the technical engineering behind them at all. We won't be discussing algorithms or, legal frameworks or those endless cycles of hype and fear about the technology.
Yeah, we are skipping all of that. Our focus is purely language. Specifically, the B2-C1 level English vocabulary and the phrasing you actually need to confidently manage these tools in a professional environment.
Which brings us to the core message of this deep dive. AI at work still needs human English.
Yes, it requires clear instructions, careful review, and responsible decisions.
That is our main thesis today. There is this very common misconception, you see it everywhere, that because these tools are so technologically advanced, we can just throw any messy half-formed thought at them and get a perfect result.
Like magic.
Right, like magic.
Yeah.
But the reality in the workplace is the exact opposite. Because these tools generate so much text so quickly, humans actually need sharper, more precise language skills to direct them.
You need to critique their output. Right?
Yeah, critique the output and ultimately take responsibility for what is finally produced. You are essentially shifting from being just a writer to being a director and an editor.
I really want to pause on that idea of being a director. When you are writing a document yourself from scratch, you make hundreds of little micro decisions along the way, right?
Absolutely.
You think about the tone, the audience, what background information is relevant. But when you delegate that writing to a machine, you have to verbalize all of those micro decisions up front in English.
Yes.
You essentially have to build this verbal fence around the machine so it doesn't wander off.
Precisely. If you are a B2 or C1 English learner, your language skills are actually more important right now than they were 5 years ago.
Wait, really? More important now?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You are no longer just communicating with your human colleagues. You're communicating with a highly capable but very literal-minded system that will just amplify whatever instructions you give it.
Right. So if your English is vague, the output will just be totally chaotic.
Exactly. So today, we're going to follow the actual workflow of using an AI tool in the office from start to finish. Think of this as the complete communication lifecycle.
Okay, I love a good roadmap. So where do we start?
We start with giving clear prompts. Then we look at the specific language needed for reviewing the output.
Okay, prompts, then reviewing.
Right. After that, we move into questioning the results and fact-checking. And finally, how you explain your decisions and the tool's involvement to your clients or your managers.
That covers everything. And for every single step, we are going to deeply analyze the exact meaning of the key phrases, the appropriate workplace register, how they actually look in a natural conversation, and the underlying workplace psychology.
We will even have a hands-on practice section later where you can test your new vocabulary, followed by a final recap.
Awesome. Let's jump right in then. Section 1, giving clear prompts. Before a tool can give you an answer, you have to ask the right question, obviously.
Right.
You are sitting there staring at a blank text box. This is the prompting phase. And the very first key phrase you need to master is be specific about the goal.
Be specific about the goal.
Yeah.
You use this phrase when you are explaining to a colleague or honestly just reminding yourself what a successful prompt needs to include before you ask the tool to write a single word.
Let's look at the register here. This phrase feels very natural in workplace and training contexts, I think.
Yeah, it's professional, but it's not overly academic or stiff.
Right. Imagine you are working on a project with a colleague. They type a prompt, they hit enter, and they immediately just sigh in total frustration.
We have all been there.
Yeah. And they say, why did the answer sound so generic? And you reply, well, the prompt was too vague. Be specific about the goal.
Let's really dissect the vocabulary in that exact interaction because there is a lot of rich B2 and C1 language happening right there.
Okay, let's unpack it.
Your colleague asked why the answer sounded generic. Generic is a fantastic workplace word. It basically means something that lacks distinctive characteristics.
Like generic brand cereal at the supermarket.
Yes, perfect example. It's just a plain white box that says cornflakes. It doesn't have a special flavor or cool mascot.
Right.
When an AI tool gives a generic answer, it means the text is technically grammatically correct, but it has no personality, no specific relevance to your company, and absolutely no real impact. It just reads like a boring Wikipedia summary.
I know exactly what you mean. And the diagnosis for a generic answer is usually that the prompt was vague.
Yes, vague.
Vague, meaning unclear, blurry, or just not sharply defined. If you tell the tool, write an email to the client about the delay, that is a completely vague prompt.
Completely.
Like, which client? What delay? Are we apologizing or are we just informing them?
Exactly. But here is where we really need to look at the usage note for this phrase, because this is where many English learners get tripped up. The usage note states that specific is more useful than detailed when the purpose matters.
Okay, I actually want to push back on this a little bit, or at least test it, because to me, specific and detailed sound like they mean the exact same thing. They sound like synonyms.
A lot of people think that, yeah.
Right. Like if I tell the tool, write exactly 500 words, use 3 bullet points, do not use passive voice, and format it in Arial font, I am giving it a ton of details. Isn't that being specific about the goal?
No, actually. That is just being detailed.
Yeah.
And understanding the semantic difference between specific and detailed is a massive leap for B2 and C1 learners.
Really? How so?
Well, detailed refers to the volume of information or the mechanics of the task. You gave the tool a long list of formatting parameters, but specific relates to the exact target, the intent, or the actual outcome you want to achieve.
Oh, I see. So goal-oriented language requires stating the outcome, the why behind the task.
Yes. Being specific about the goal means telling the tool the desired effect on the reader. For instance, a specific goal is, the goal of this email is to persuade the client to accept a 2-week delay without asking for a financial discount.
Wow, okay, that is very different.
Right. You can write a highly detailed prompt that completely fails because it lacks a specific goal. You just get 500 perfectly formatted words that offer the client a massive discount.
Which is the opposite of what you want.
Exactly. Conversely, you can write a very short prompt that succeeds brilliantly because the goal is laser-focused.
That makes so much sense. So if I am managing a junior employee and their AI drafts are always missing the mark, I probably shouldn't tell them, hey, give the tool more details.
Definitely not. If you say that, they might just start typing pages and pages of irrelevant formatting instructions.
Right. Instead, I need to say, be specific about the goal.
Exactly. It changes their entire psychological approach to the task. They stop thinking about the length or the mechanics of the prompt, and they start thinking about the core business objective. Like, what are we actually trying to achieve in the real world?
That distinction is incredibly helpful. Now, once you have established that specific goal, there is another really crucial element you have to provide. And this brings us to the second key phrase in our prompt building section. Give it context.
Give it context. You use this phrase when the tool needs background information to generate a useful response. The register here is very common and conversational. It is an everyday office phrase that you will hear and use constantly.
A perfect example of this in action would be telling a coworker, give it context about the audience and the tone. Let me bring in another analogy here, actually.
Go for it.
I think of context like telling a hired chef who's coming to dinner. If you just hand a chef a list of ingredients like chicken, rice, vegetables, that's just detailed.
Right.
But if you don't give them context, they don't know what to cook or how to plate it. Are we feeding a board of wealthy corporate executives who expect a 5-course gourmet meal? Or are we feeding a kindergarten class that just wants chicken nuggets?
Exactly. The raw ingredients are exactly the same, but the context completely dictates the output.
Right. You can't just give the AI tool the data. You have to give it the environment surrounding the data.
That chef analogy perfectly captures the linguistic function of the word context. Context comes from the Latin contextus, meaning a joining together or weaving together. It is the circumstances that form the setting for an event, a statement, or an idea. Without it, things just lose their meaning.
Let's look at how this plays out in a natural office dialogue, then.
Okay, imagine a colleague shows you an AI draft and says, the message sounds too formal. Your immediate response should be, then give it context about who will read it.
The colleague identified a problem with the style, right? It's too formal. And the solution is recognizing that the machine is operating in a vacuum. It literally doesn't know who the audience is.
Let's do a linguistic deep dive on how we construct sentences around the word context in business English, because it is a very versatile noun.
Okay.
We usually use it with the verbs give or provide. So you can say give it context or provide context. You can also talk about the absence of it by saying there is a lack of context.
Notice the grammar in the phrase give it context. The pronoun it is referring to the tool itself.
Yes.
We really tend to anthropomorphize these tools in our everyday language, don't we? Treating them like that literal-minded intern again. We say give it context the exact same way we would say give John the background file.
That is a very keen observation about modern office syntax. We're using a detransitive verb structure there. Give is the verb, it is the indirect object, and context is the direct object. It is highly natural, fluent phrasing.
Good to know.
However, there is a very, very important usage note here regarding security and corporate policy. The usage note says, keep examples simple and do not mention private data.
Yes, let's definitely unpack that. When we say give it context, we are absolutely not saying upload our confidential client database into the machine.
Definitely not. And this is a crucial workplace skill for B2 and C1 learners to develop. The linguistic ability to summarize context safely.
Safely being the keyword.
Right. You must separate the context from the confidential data. This requires the skill of abstraction. Let's say you are drafting an email about a late payment from a major, highly sensitive client.
Okay.
The unsafe, career-ending way to give context is typing, our client Megacorp owes us $500,000 and their CEO, Jane Doe, is actively avoiding our phone calls.
Yeah, that is a very quick way to get a meeting with the HR and IT departments. You might literally lose your job over that.
Exactly. You are putting private, sensitive data into an external tool.
So how do we express that exact same context safely using our advanced English abstraction skills?
You abstract the specific identities of numbers while keeping the situational dynamics intact.
What does that look like?
You would type context. The recipient is a long-term enterprise client who is significantly behind on a large payment. The tone should be firm, but maintain the professional relationship.
Oh, that is brilliant. You have given the tool the exact context it needs. The power dynamic, the history, the current tension, but without risking a single piece of private data.
Right. You are describing the shape of the problem without giving away the substance of the problem.
Okay, so to summarize our prompting workflow so far, to get a useful draft, you must first be specific about the goal so the tool knows what the outcome should be, and then give it context safely so the tool understands the environment.
Correct. You have built the foundation. Now the machine does its work, it whirs for about 3 seconds, and it hands you back a completed draft.
Which means the first phase of our workflow is over. We transition now to section 2, reviewing output. You gave the instructions, and the tool generated the text. What happens next? We must mentally shift from the role of instructing to the role of reviewing. And the first phrase you really need in this phase is, this needs a human review.
This needs a human review. This is the phrase you use when AI output should be checked by an actual person before any action is taken. The register note here describes it as professional, careful, and procedural. It signals caution.
The example sentence is straightforward. This needs a human review before we send it. Let's imagine the dialogue for this one.
Okay.
Say a very eager junior employee generates a response to a customer complaint. They read it on the screen, it looks fine to them, and they ask you, can we use this answer immediately?
And you put a hand up and say, not yet. This needs a human review.
Now, I want to challenge this phrase for a moment.
Sure.
I understand the intent, but isn't human review a bit redundant? Like, if I am sitting in a physical office building surrounded by my human colleagues and I ask someone to review a document, obviously a human is going to do it.
You would think so.
Right. We don't say, I'm going to drink some human water or let's have a human meeting. Why do we suddenly need to specify the word human here?
That is a fascinating question, and it points to a very recent and rapid evolution in the English language. 10 years ago, you are absolutely right. Saying human review in an office context would have sounded bizarre.
Like a line from a science fiction movie or something.
Exactly. You would just say, this needs a review. But the emergence of generative AI in the workplace has forced us to create a new fixed collocation in business English.
A collocation being a group of words that are habitually juxtaposed or naturally go together, right?
Exactly. We had to assert the word human into the daily lexicon to establish a firm boundary of accountability.
I see.
Because when a document can be generated in 3 seconds by a machine and then potentially summarized, checked, or even automatically emailed by another machine, the workflow can become entirely automated. The human is completely removed from the loop.
That's a scary thought.
It is. So by stating, this needs a human review, you are verbally pulling the emergency brake on that automation. You are asserting that a person, someone with moral, ethical, and professional accountability, must read the text with their own eyes.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So it is not redundant at all. It is a necessary clarification in a modern, hyper-automated workflow. It is essentially drawing a line in the sand.
Yes. And the usage note for this phrase points out something very important about workplace psychology and office politics.
What's that?
The note says this phrase encourages responsibility without sounding anti-AI.
Oh, that is a subtle but massive point for professionals to understand.
It really is.
Because if a colleague shows you an AI draft and you say, I don't trust this machine, it generates garbage, I need to read this myself, you immediately sound like you are fighting against the company's new technology initiatives.
Right. You sound resistant to change, like a dinosaur.
Yeah. But if you calmly state, this needs a human review, you are accepting the presence of the technology, but you are layering traditional professional diligence on top of it.
Precisely. It makes you sound like a careful, strategic manager of resources rather than a fearful opponent of progress. It is a highly professional way to slow the momentum down when everyone else in the office is just rushing to use the AI's instant answers.
Okay, so the brake is pulled. The human is now reviewing the document. They're reading through the AI draft. And let's say they find an issue. It is not that the facts are wrong, like the dates are correct, the prices are correct, but the way it is written just feels, well, off.
Yes.
That brings us to our next critical phrase. The tone is not quite right.
The tone is not quite right. You use this when the message style feels wrong. The register is diplomatic and useful. I would argue this is one of the most powerful phrases a B2 to C1 learner can master for overall workplace harmony, not just for AI stuff.
An example of this in action would be telling your team, the tone is not quite right for this client.
Let's look at the natural dialogue. You are reviewing a draft with a colleague. Your colleague says, but the information is accurate.
And you reply, true, but the tone is not quite right. I actually want to use an analogy to explain why this phrase is so incredibly effective in a professional setting.
Please do.
It is the difference between telling a coworker your suit is ugly versus saying, that color isn't quite right for you.
Ooh, good analogy.
The first one is a direct attack. It just makes people defensive. But the second one achieves the exact same goal, telling them their outfit is a mistake, but it preserves the relationship.
Yes, completely.
Even if you are technically just critiquing a machine's output, you are often critiquing the prompt that your human colleague wrote to generate that output. So diplomacy still absolutely matters.
Your analogy perfectly highlights the English art of softening. This is a major hurdle for B2 learners moving into C1 fluency.
Softening, right?
Often, intermediate learners are very direct because they have a limited vocabulary. They really only know the extremes. If something is wrong, they say the tone is wrong or this is bad.
Very blunt.
Yes. But in professional English, particularly in British, North American, and many international corporate cultures, we heavily rely on diplomatic language to soften criticism. Directness is often perceived as aggression.
So true. Let's break down the mechanics of that softening. How does the phrase, not quite right, actually work linguistically?
Well, the adverb quite is doing a massive amount of heavy lifting here. Quite in this context means completely or entirely.
Okay.
So when you say something is not quite right, you are literally saying it is not 100% correct. It might be 90% correct or 80% correct. You are acknowledging that the effort wasn't a total failure.
It softens the blow.
Exactly. It leaves room for adjustment rather than demanding a total tear-it-down rewrite.
It is so much more collaborative. And the word tone itself is such a tricky concept to pin down for language learners, I think.
It really is. Tone is the attitude, the emotion, or the level of formality conveyed by the words.
Like, if you write an email to your manager saying, Give me the quarterly report right now. The information is accurate. You want the report immediately. But the tone is aggressive, commanding, and totally inappropriate for speaking to a superior.
Exactly. The tone is not quite right.
AI tools notoriously struggle with nuance, don't they?
Oh, big time. They operate on probability, not empathy. They might write an apology email to a furious customer that sounds far too cheerful and upbeat. Or maybe a sales pitch to a long-term partner that sounds desperate and transactional.
Right. Being able to articulate that by saying the tone is not quite right allows you to pinpoint the stylistic issue without getting into a big argument about the factual content.
As the colleague said in our dialogue, true, but the tone is not quite right. You validate the factual accuracy first, which lowers their defenses, and then you critique the style.
That is basically a masterclass in professional feedback right there. Validate the facts, critique the style. But what happens when the style is actually fine, but the facts themselves are the problem? We have reviewed the output for tone, but tone is really just the surface. Now we have to look at the substance.
Right, the actual data.
What happens when you read a sentence in the AI output and you think, wait a minute, did our revenue really double last year? That doesn't sound true at all.
That leads us directly into Section 3, questioning results.
The next step in our workflow is fact-checking. And the go-to phrase for this is, we should double-check that.
We should double-check that, meaning use this phrase when you are not sure the information provided by the tool is correct. The register note here describes it as natural and responsible. It is kind of the verbal equivalent of putting on a safety harness.
The example sentence is, we should double-check that before we include it in the presentation. Let's imagine the office dialogue for this one.
Okay.
A colleague is reading from the AI draft and says, hey, the tool says the corporate travel policy changed last week.
And you respond, we should double-check that.
Yeah. Now, I want to ask about the perception of this phrase. If I say this in a meeting with my manager, does it make me sound like I don't trust my coworkers? Or that I don't trust the expensive tools the company just purchased? Like, does it sound overly skeptical or negative?
Not at all. In modern workplaces, especially those utilizing AI, double-checking is viewed as a hallmark of professional diligence, not a sign of distrust.
Okay, that's good to know.
Let's do a linguistic deep dive on the phrasal verb double-check. Why do we say double-check instead of just recheck or verify or validate?
Yeah, why the word double? What was the first check?
The prefix double implies a safety net. It suggests that a first check has already occurred.
Oh, I see.
When you are dealing with AI, the implicit assumption in the room is that the machine has done the initial work, the first check, so to speak. By saying we should double-check that, you're proposing a secondary, human layer of verification.
It is a highly collaborative phrasing. You aren't slamming your fist on the table and saying, the machine is lying.
Right. You are calmly saying, let's be absolutely certain.
And I really want to point out the pronoun used in the phrase here. We should double-check that. It's not, I will check it, which makes you sound like a lone wolf.
Yeah.
And it is certainly not, you need to check it, which sounds like you are giving orders or assigning blame to your colleague. The use of we makes it a shared team responsibility. It instantly diffuses any tension in the room.
Exactly. It creates a great environment of shared accountability. The usage note for this item specifies that this phrase is particularly useful for facts, dates, names, and numbers.
Things that have a definitive right or wrong answer.
Right. AI tools are notorious for a phenomenon called hallucinating. This is the industry term for when the tool confidently and fluently invents a fake fact.
That sounds dangerous.
It is.
Yeah.
It doesn't know it's lying. It is just predicting the next most likely word mathematically. So if a tool generates a report saying your company made $4 million in profit last quarter, you remember that it was only $3 million, you don't aggressively shout, this data is totally wrong.
Right, that would cause a panic.
You just calmly say, we should double check that number. It maintains a calm, analytical, professional atmosphere while effectively halting the spread of misinformation.
It's all about keeping the temperature in the room cool while still being totally rigorous about the truth.
Exactly.
But sometimes the problem isn't that a fact is actively wrong. Sometimes the problem is that a vital fact is entirely missing. The data provided is technically true, but it doesn't tell the whole story.
Yes.
That brings us to our next phrase. It may be missing important context.
It may be missing important context. You use this when an answer is incomplete. It's not necessarily false, but it is dangerously partial. The register is analytical and professional.
The example sentence is, the summary is useful, but it may be missing important context. Let's look at the dialogue.
Okay, your colleague listed an AI-generated summary of a long meeting and says, well, the answer's short and clear.
You read it over and reply, yes, but it may be missing important context.
This is a perfect opportunity to discuss the concept of hedging in professional English.
Hedging, like the bushes.
Not quite. Hedging is the use of linguistic devices to express hesitation, uncertainty, or caution. We use hedging to avoid making absolute statements that could easily be proven wrong.
Ah, okay.
For B2 and C1 learners, mastering hedging is a true sign of high-level analytical tact. It really separates the intermediate speakers from the advanced professionals.
Let's break down the mechanics of hedging in this specific sentence then. In the phrase, it may be missing important context, the word may is the hedge, right?
Yes, may is a modal verb of possibility. Contrast this with making an absolute statement like, it is missing important context.
If you say it is missing, you are making a definitive factual claim.
Exactly. And if someone else reviews the original documents and proves that the context is actually there, or maybe that the context wasn't even needed, well, you look foolish. You made a strong claim and you were wrong. You lose professional credibility.
But if I say it may be missing important context, I am protecting myself. I am raising a flag for investigation. I am saying, let's pause and look deeper without committing myself to a definitive verdict.
Exactly. It shows you are thinking critically, but you remain intellectually humble and open to correction. It heavily protects your professional reputation. Furthermore, let's look at the word missing. We are describing a state of absence.
Right.
We aren't actively assigning malicious intent to the machine by saying the tool deleted the context or the tool ignored the context. We are simply observing a flaw in the output. It may be missing important context.
And this ties beautifully back to our earlier discussion in the prompting phase about giving context. If you don't give it context in the prompt, the output will almost certainly be missing important context.
Full circle.
In our dialogue, the colleague praises the output for being short and clear. But brevity isn't always a virtue if it sacrifices the bigger picture.
Totally.
Imagine an AI summarizing a really complex legal negotiation. The summary might be very short and clear, like, Party A offered $10,000. Party B declined.
That is technically true.
But if it misses the context that Party B declined because they were deeply insulted and are threatening a massive lawsuit, well, the summary is dangerously incomplete.
Precisely. You are using language to ensure the technology serves the complex, messy reality of your business, rather than reducing your business to overly simplistic bullet points.
Okay, we are moving through the workflow beautifully. We have given a clear prompt, we have reviewed the tone, we have questioned the facts, and we have checked for missing context.
We're almost at the end of the process.
Right. Now, we arrive at the final stage. You have a finished, polished document. You are presenting this final work to your client, your manager, or your broader team. How do you clearly explain the role the AI tool played versus your own human role?
This is section 4, explaining decisions.
And our first phrase here is, we used it as a starting point.
We used it as a starting point. This is the phrase you use to say the AI helped, but humans made the final decision and did the heavy lifting. The register is professional, realistic, and highly transparent.
The example sentence is, we used it as a starting point, then revised the final version ourselves. And our dialogue goes like this.
A manager looks at a 20-page proposal and asks, did AI write this whole thing?
You confidently reply, no, we used it as a starting point.
It's a great response.
I love this phrase because it perfectly manages expectations. It's like using a pre-made cake mix from the grocery store.
I like where this is going.
You open the box, add some water and eggs, and bake it. That's your starting point. But then you make your own complex, homemade buttercream frosting, you pipe delicate flowers onto the edges, and you arrange fresh fruit on top.
Sounds delicious.
Right. You didn't start entirely from scratch, milling the flour yourself, but the final presentation, the flavor profile, and the aesthetic are entirely yours. You use the mix as a starting point.
That cake mix analogy is excellent because it highlights the core business concept of added human value. In business English, transparency about process is incredibly powerful.
Yeah, I'd imagine so.
10 years ago, people might have hidden the fact that they used a template or a software tool. They wanted to look like absolute geniuses who did everything by hand.
Sure.
But today, the usage note for this phrase points out that it is balanced and realistic. Pretending you didn't use AI at all might seem dishonest to a tech-savvy boss, but claiming the AI did all the work drastically undersells your professional contribution.
Right. I want to push back on this a little bit, though.
Okay.
Let's say the AI really did write 90% of the text. I just went in and fuxed a few commas, changed one or two adjectives, and hit save. If I tell my client we used it as a starting point, isn't that just a polite corporate way of lying to them? Aren't I basically taking credit for the machine's work?
That is a very fair ethical question.
Yeah.
But let's really look at what starting point implies. A starting point implies a journey. It implies navigation. The AI provided the origin, right? The blank page was no longer blank. But you, the human professional, navigated the journey to the final destination. Even if you only changed commas, you made the intellectual decision that the rest of the text was accurate, legally safe, and on brand.
That's a really good point.
The physical keystrokes don't matter nearly as much as the intellectual approval. You edited, you reviewed, you double-checked.
Ah, I see. It acknowledges the efficiency of the tool. We didn't waste time staring at a blank page, but without surrendering the intellectual authorship, it says the machine gave us momentum, but we steered the car.
Exactly. And this transitions us perfectly to the most important ethical concept of this entire deep dive.
Which is?
How do you take ultimate responsibility for what the machine helped you build? This is our final phrase. The final decision is still ours.
The final decision is still ours. You use this to emphasize ultimate human responsibility. The register is clear, firm, and highly responsible. It is the language of leadership.
The example sentence is just a powerful standalone statement. The final decision is still ours. Let's look at the dialogue.
Your team is looking at an AI analysis of 2 different marketing strategies.
A colleague says, the tool recommends option B.
You respond, that is useful, but the final decision is still ours.
As the usage note states, this is the main ethical idea of the entire deep dive. Let's analyze the grammar of ownership here. The final decision is still ours.
Okay.
The subject is the final decision. The verb is, and the possessive pronoun is ours. We're actively claiming ownership of the outcome.
The word that jumps out at me linguistically is the adverb still.
Yes.
Why not just say, the final decision is ours? That is grammatically correct. Why add the word still?
That adverb still is doing profound linguistic and philosophical work. Still indicates continuity in the face of change. Right. It acknowledges that a major disruption has occurred in the workplace. We have this incredible new technology that can write, analyze, crunch numbers, and recommend options at lightning speed. The process of how we work has fundamentally changed.
Yes, completely.
But the word still asserts that the fundamental accountability has not changed. Before AI, humans were responsible for the work. Now, with AI, humans are still responsible for the work.
Wow. That one tiny word carries so much weight. Because, I mean, if a tool recommends firing a vendor or changing a marketing strategy or investing in a new software platform, the tool cannot be fired if that decision goes disastrously wrong.
No, it cannot.
The tool cannot take the blame. It doesn't lose its salary.
Exactly. The tool is just a highly sophisticated calculator. You cannot blame a calculator if you build a bridge that collapses.
Right. When the colleague in our dialogue says the tool recommends option B, they are falling into the very dangerous trap of outsourcing leadership to a machine. They are deferring authority.
Yes. Your response, that is useful, but the final decision is still ours, is a masterclass in professional grounding.
It acknowledges the input without surrendering the authority. It accepts the data, that is useful, but reclaims the leadership. The final decision is still ours.
Exactly.
For a B2-C1 learner, being able to confidently deliver the sentence in a meeting will instantly elevate your perceived leadership skills. You sound like a manager, not a passenger.
Precisely.
Yeah.
You are proving that you are managing the technology rather than letting the technology manage you.
Okay, let's take a deep breath. We have covered a massive amount of linguistic territory today.
We really have.
We have unpacked the nuances of specificity versus detail, safe context abstraction, the necessity of human review, diplomatic softening, hedging, and the grammar of ethical ownership. Now, it is time to put this all into practice.
Yes, section 5, the practice section.
How does this work?
This is where we want you, the listener, to actively engage. Knowledge is most valuable when it is understood and applied. We are going to test your ability to upgrade basic, flawed, or overly blunt English into the polished, professional B2 to C1 language we've just discussed.
I love this part. Here is how this will work. I am going to role play a common workplace situation where I am using poor, maybe A2 or B1 level English, to describe an AI issue. I will pause for just a moment to allow you, the listener, to think about which of our key phrases applies.
And then I will provide the better response using the exact vocabulary we learned today, and we will discuss why it is the superior choice. This is where we train your ear.
Ready? Let's dive in. Situation 1. You are looking over your colleague's shoulder. They are typing a prompt that just says, write an email about the meeting. You want to tell them they need to focus on the outcome. You say, the prompt is vague.
Better. Be specific about the goal.
Let's talk about why the first one fails. Saying the prompt is vague is just a criticism of what they did wrong. It is looking backward. It doesn't tell them how to fix it at all.
Right. Saying be specific about the goal is an active instruction on how to do it right.
Yeah.
It moves the conversation forward and focuses on the outcome.
Exactly. It is constructive rather than destructive feedback. You are guiding them, not just judging them.
Situation 2.
Right. Situation 2. The AI tool generated a document, but it reads like it was written for a group of PhD scientists instead of our casual marketing team. You tell your coworker the message needs background.
Better. Give it context about the audience and tone.
Background is a decent intermediate word, I guess, but context is the precise professional term we want here. And by adding the specific parameters about the audience and tone, you aren't just telling them a generic piece is missing.
Right. You are giving them the exact variables they need to fix the prompt. You are turning a vague complaint into an actionable, precise instruction. You are teaching them how to build that environment for the AI.
Situation 3. The AI spits out a statistic that says your biggest competitor went bankrupt last year, and you know for an absolute fact they are still in business and thriving. You point to the screen and say loudly, the answer may be wrong.
Better. We should double check that.
Why is the word wrong so dangerous in this scenario, even if the fact actually is completely wrong?
Because if you say the answer may be wrong, it creates a sudden confrontational negative atmosphere in the room. It sounds like an accusation, either against the tool or against the person who prompted the tool.
And people get defensive.
Exactly. We should double check that as a collaborative, process-oriented phrase. It initiates a necessary verification process without injecting panic, blame, or high emotion into the meeting.
Beautiful. Situation 4. The tool wrote an apology email to a furious client, but the email sounds incredibly cheerful, upbeat, and entirely inappropriate. You turn to your manager and say, the style feels wrong.
Better. The tone is not quite right.
Here we see the power of diplomatic softening again. The style feels wrong is abrupt and blunt. It sounds like a flat rejection of the entire effort.
Yeah, it's a bit harsh.
The tone is not quite right validates the overall factual effort while precisely identifying the emotional mismatch. It uses the exact linguistic term, tone, rather than the broader, less precise term, style.
Which demonstrates a much higher command of the English language. It is the language of an editor. It leaves room for collaboration rather than shutting down the conversation entirely.
Final one. Situation 5. A client is worried because they heard you use AI tools to draft their quarterly financial reports. They ask if a robot is doing your job. You want to explain responsible use and calm them down. You say, we used it, but we made the choices.
Better. We used it as a starting point, but the final decision is still ours.
That is just a gorgeous, commanding sentence. We used it, but we made the choices sounds incredibly defensive. It sounds like you are backpedaling, like you got caught doing something bad.
But we used it as a starting point. But the final decision is still ours is a confident, proactive statement of methodology.
Yes, it is.
It perfectly blends transparency, admitting the use of the tool as an origin with absolute accountability. It reassures the client that human expertise, your expertise, is still the ultimate filter and the final authority.
Excellent work. If you are answering those correctly in your head, or even just recognizing why the better phrases were superior to the basic ones, you are well on your way to mastering this professional vocabulary.
You really are.
This brings us to our outro and the final recap. We have covered the complete life cycle of managing AI communication in English. Let's rapid fire the key phrases one last time for pronunciation and memory reinforcement.
I will read them, and I really encourage you to notice the rhythm, the stress, and the confidence in each sentence. Number 1, be specific about the goal.
Number 2, give it context.
Number 3, this needs a human review.
Number 4, the tone is not quite right.
Number 5, we should double check that.
Number 6, it may be missing important context.
Number 7, we used it as a starting point.
And number 8, the final decision is still ours.
Those phrases are your toolkit. They will allow you to navigate any AI-related conversation in the workplace with confidence, diplomacy, and absolute linguistic precision.
But before we let you go, I want to leave you with a provocative thought and a final task. Knowledge isn't just about passively listening, it's about actively doing.
Yes.
Take out a piece of paper right now, or open a blank document on your computer. I want you to practice writing just one AI prompt, but I want you to apply everything we learned today.
Make sure your prompt explicitly states a specific goal.
Identify the exact audience.
Set a clear tone.
And outline a clear final task without using any private data.
And as you do this, run the prompt. See how much the output changes when you use precise B2 to C1 English to direct the machine, compared to a generic, vague prompt.
It's a night and day difference.
You will quickly realize that the software tool isn't the magic ingredient. Your English language skills are your greatest asset. The machine is incredibly fast, but it is only as smart as the language you use to guide it.
Going back to our very first analogy, if you want that literal-minded intern to bring you a perfect cup of coffee, you have to know exactly how to ask for it.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. If you found this breakdown valuable, and if you want to keep mastering your professional communication and navigating the modern workplace with confidence, please make sure to subscribe to the Pathlate English channel.
We have plenty more deep dives coming your way to help you elevate your English.
Until next time, remember, the technology may change, but the final decision is still ours.